Yeah, what's good, Joe? It's your man, the Bigga P, and I'm here to record my thoughts from the card on Showtime last night. It was where the main event was Bernard Hopkins versus was it Karo Murat. First, I'll talk about the first fight that set it off on the card: Deontay Wilder versus Nikolai Furtha. Now, pretty much, I mean, now everyone pretty much knows the story for Deontay Wilder. I think he's the um, last American fighter to date that's actually won a medal. Not a gold medal, I think it was like bronze or something like that. But he was the last one to actually, get a medal from the Olympics. And that was back in 2008. And since then, he's been largely he's like under the radar, facing your usual, journeymen, cans, bums, if you want to call them that. And for the most part, what's remarkable, he's knocked all of them out, and he's never gone past 4 rounds. He did have one scare where he did get dropped by a journeyman, um, and nearly knocked out. But that was like 3 years ago. But ever since then, he's been feasting. He hasn't really made a jump up in competition. I mean, the most notable name on his scalp so far was the prior to this one tonight when he gave Sergey Lakovic a first round knockout and had him seizuring on the canvas, which was scary in itself. Ridiculously scary power. Um, and you would think, at least from there, that he'd at least jump up to like someone else on that type of level. I mean, Lakovic is shot to pieces, but he is a former heavyweight champion, you know, as as I wouldn't say good or bad as it sounds. He's a man with a name. So you think, okay, fight someone at least on that type of level, whether they're shot or they're serviceable. The fight with Further was uh, pretty much was not what I was expecting in terms of his actual opponent for last night. Because Further himself is against another safe journeyman, who every now and then can provide a test to somebody. I mean, he gave Fury a test a while ago before getting KO'd. But yeah, so the fight went. I think probably within the first couple seconds of the fight, Further landed a left, either like a straight left or a jab, and had Wilder like backing up. And I'm thinking to myself, no, that can't go down like that. And Further actually had the right plan to pressure him. Just to make sure that you can give him enough range for him to actually load up that right hand. Um, what he didn't do, however, because as he was pushing, he wasn't keeping his hand. Like if he had probably utilized a high guard type of fighting, he probably would have lasted a little longer than he did. Not to say that he didn't last long. I mean, he actually made it to the fourth round with only like three of Deontay Wilder's opponents have actually been. There's actually room for him to get to five, so at least he'll have that. But the fight pretty much came like Further went down a couple times. He was bloodied up, but he kept coming. And I thought, okay, maybe Wilder will get sloppy or he'll start tiring out. And it didn't really happen, but there was just a lot of Wilder's bad habits because he's fought these type of fighters for so very long. He hasn't really, like I mean, yeah, I mean he does drop his hands a couple times and doesn't have I mean, there's a couple of little minor things that like part of the right heavyweight could expose, like the top heavyweights. Like I said, because I'm not like I said, because he was caught with a couple punches over and over again, and I do think I mean, and honestly, I do think he is probably right to be KO'd in an upset. But fortunately, Further was not the man to do it because I mean, after taking pretty much a steady beating, he was knocked down in the fourth round with a hellacious right hand. Um, and of course, the ref was white to wave it off the time, not even give him a count. So I mean, Deontay has fought 30 professional fights since 2008, and right now, I mean, at this particular time, his next fight has to be someone with a name. I mean, I know the heavyweight division is not what it used to be, but there are still some very serviceable fighters other than Nikolai Bertha. Um, Yes, I mean I know he's being brought along slow. I mean, being brought along slowly is for maybe your first couple years in the sport, but when you've been fighting for 5 years, it's time to make a significant jump in your competition. I know they're trying to pull him. I know. I guess the players are probably waiting for Vitali to either retire and then drop the WBC title, and then he goes in the mix with that. Um, but in my personal thing, like I mean, well, he's not ready for any of the. He's not ready for the class. I mean, he probably won't fight Vitaly at all because Vitaly will probably be done fighting within probably a year. Vlad though is a possible opponent, and I picked Vlad to absolutely knock him cold. As shaky as Vlad's chin actually is, simply because, like I said, the boxing skills are not, basically because I think Wilder most likely. I think, I mean, besides just the minor things, I just think that Wilder fights down to his competition, and I mean, we won't know really what he has until he actually fights someone who's prime, in shape, serviceable. And the heavyweight division does have a couple of those like flying around, so we'll see where it goes with him. And like I said, I don't knock Further. I mean, Further was there. I mean, I thought he would actually get KO'd in the first round, and he almost did, and he lasted to the fourth, which is good for him. Um, but yeah, but Wilder has to stop fighting that type of competition because if he does, then one day he will run into the one journeyman of that nature, who can actually who a spoiler who will knock him out. It's happened before, and it definitely will happen again. The second fight in the card was Peter Quillin versus Gabriel Rosado. Now, this is for Quillin's WBO middleweight title. Now, originally, I was not a fan of this fight, um, mostly because I think I thought this was Quillin pulling another Jermaine Taylor type situation, basically having another someone who I consider a junior middle go up and wait to try to fight him because he's done that a couple times, and and I thought it would be a mismatch. So imagine my surprise when because I didn't even watch their weigh in either. I just think okay, Rosado is gonna come in, he's gonna look bloated like he did against um, GGG, and also against Love. So I was actually surprised when Rosado actually looked pretty filled out, and he looked bigger than Quinn. So, and I think that told me in the me seeing that originally, I think they set the tone for how the fight played out. Now, early in the fight, Quillen did manage to score a flash knockdown on Rosado. I think it was in the second round, and then after that, Rosado came, and adjusted. And we learned a lot. We learned some things about Peter Quillen. The most notable is that Peter Quillen, when someone can actually bully him, he doesn't know what to do. And B, he can't fight going backwards. Not at all. He can't do it. And what we saw was Rosado wobbled him, a good amount of times and kept the pressure on him. And slowly and but surely he turned the tides. And I thought, just seeing Quinn to look at his eyes because he had the deer and headlights look like, literally, like after he dropped Rosado actually like I think it was at the end of the third round, that third or fourth round where Rosado had him like in trouble, like he was just like he just didn't know what to do, and I thought that Rosado would actually end matters against the rope with a stoppage. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. At the end, I think it was it was in the 10th round. Quillen landed. Now these are one of the most unfortunate stoppages in boxing. The cut stoppage. Um, like I said, I mean, there could be a lot of drama. It could bring a sudden end to a fight, depending on depending on how the cut was caused. And in this case, it was clear as day. It was just a simple left jab that cut the eye, and it was bad. And it was bad too because I thought Rosado was really closing in, and he was about to finish Quillen. probably in the next couple of rounds, and then just to have just one jab, like literally sliced Rosado's eyelid, like it was bad, like the blood was pumping after that jab. And I know Rosado's had issues with cutting before. I'm like, okay, this is bad. I was hoping it was maybe as a headbutt or whatever, because I was like, if they stopped the fight because of that, yeah, he's gonna lose. So I think they went out in the 10th round, and they were, and one exchange. And unfortunately for Rosado, I mean, he couldn't fight backing up. Yeah, because he's not a champion. He had to go and actually win the title. And after an exchange, the referee had to call time, went to the corner. Doctor's like, that's it. And I felt for Rosado because it's just like another chance for him to get a title, and he was so close to actually doing it. And I mean, I wish that Doctor probably just let me. I guess it's so late in the fight. The doctors, I mean, he could see. It wasn't like the GGG fight, which he was just getting battered senselessly. He was the crimson and just getting battered senselessly around the ring. He was competitive in this fight, so yeah, I felt for Rosado. However, the unfortunate thing is the cut eye stoppage was probably a blessing in disguise, because when they read the official cards and literally almost all three judges had the fight as a shutout for Quillin, it was probably one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. It was like I was like, really? Like, I mean, I think Rosado, I think only won maybe 1 or 2 rounds on one other card, and I think the rest pushed the shut off. I'm like, this is like another case of these bullshit judges cards. Like, there were like literally there was no. I mean, I had the fight close. I had Rosado up by I think 2 rounds. But it was a close fight, but I had Rosado up by 2. And I mean, neither fighter was more dominant than the other, but just having to shut up, I was like, someone must have paid those judges to give, to have, to give scores like that, because I mean, it would have been a absolute atrocity had this fight actually did play out to a decision, and those type of scores were read. Yeah, because it would have just been an absolute pure robbery. Um, So as much as I didn't like the cut eye stoppage, it is a legitimate stoppage. I mean, as much as we all wanted to see a fight to end at its rightful conclusion, you don't want to get to the point where the eyelid comes, is completely like detached in the fight, and then you expose your eye to more damage. Um, so yeah, I mean, as much as I was disappointed in the stoppage, I was horrified and disgusted by the actual judges' cards. For Rosado, I just feel for him because, like I said, this is just not 2013 has not been this year. I mean, he was brutalized by GGG earlier in his first fight at Middle, and then the Love fight, which he was jobbed, but luckily Love got caught with that shit in the system. So they no contest that, and rightfully so. And now I mean I hope maybe because Rosado lost the fight. I mean, it's the unfortunate thing. Like, I mean, I can't say he didn't lose. I mean, he lost a legitimate stoppage because you get cut to the bone like he did. You gotta stop the fight. I just feel for him because he was close. I felt he was close to actually ending in matters. Most likely, this probably. I mean, and there's probably not a high chance of a no contest for this fight. If there is, I'll be surprised. Um, but yeah, I feel it was probably at this point. I mean, I would definitely watch a rematch. I mean, I feel it would be a nice card you could throw there somewhere in 2014. You could throw it on the undercard of some fight. Um, excuse me, of some Showtime pay per view in next year. As for Quillin, his time his time is coming to an end. Um, Before, I always said that Darren Barker was probably the weakest out of the middleweight champions. But now I'm not sure. The only real difference between Quillin and Barker is Quillin has more power, but Barker can actually box. Um, So pretty much those two are probably like neck and neck. But and I mean, but I would actually, but I just don't see Quillin actually keeping his title for very long unless he continues to go fight 154 pounds. But then he's going to run to the 154 pounder that can punch above his weight, punch significantly above his weight, and then he's in trouble. Yeah, but yeah, he has. I mean, I know he's game, but he has some flaws in there. Like the whole thing, not being able to fight backwards and being pressured, not knowing how to handle pressure and being bullied. Yeah, I mean, it's not like 160 is not the division to have those type of issues. I mean, he will not beat a Sergio Martinez, and he won't beat a GGG, you know, with flaws like that. Um, but as long as he makes the fight exciting, that's what it's all about, right? For him, and he keeps his title. So, like I said, I just don't see him keeping that belt for very long. So the main event was Bernard Hopkins versus Murat. Now this was a fight that was postponed before because Murat had visa issues. It's also not a fight not like people were wondering because it's for with Hopkins. He's 48 years old, and if you grew up watching Bernard in the 90s, in the 90s and stuff like that, it's very clear that why Bernard remains in absolute great shape. He's lost a lot. He's lost a lot. He's lost a lot. He's slowing down. He's slowing down significantly. He's competitive though because he's a very crafty and cagey old fighter. He has old school, that old school training. He, good, very sound fundamentals, and that's why he's staying as long as he did. Murat is a name I've heard before. I personally have never seen him fight. I just know a couple of fights that some others that I have seen. Um, so I mean, I was thinking maybe he might be just an unknown thing. He might just come out and actually try to KO Hopkins, which he actually did. He was actually competitive. He was competitive early, which made Hopkins actually be more active than what he usually is. Because usually the knock against be up for the last like 5 years or so is that he fights at a very snail's pace, and he has a way of actually having his opponents fight to that pace. Of course, there are some exceptions like the Dawson fight and the Calzaghe fight in more recent times. So I mean, it turned out to be a very interesting affair. Like he staggered Murat a couple of times. Murat, hit him with some good shots. Didn't really hurt him at all. Dirtiest. It was a dirty fight. It was very dirty, like multiple fouling everywhere. I also felt like Smoger, because I know Smoger is, he's a very competent ref, but I know sometimes he has his favorites that he likes to show, that he shows a little bit favorable to, like lets him get away with shit like that, and he didn't let Murat get away with nothing. So like I said, I know Bernard was saying he wanted to get the KO, and he nearly got it on a couple of occasions where he actually managed to wobble him because Murat, unfortunately, his conditioning was not on Bernard's type of level. So, that's what I said. It was just, nothing special about the fight. It was dirty and it was foul filled, but Bernard was engaged more. It wasn't like, let's say, the Cloud fight or anything like that. He was active, and Murat came to fight, and it ended up something entertaining. You couldn't turn your eyes away from. Now Bernard's a little, but now what I'm not a fan of though with Bernard is the whole Bernard the alien Hopkins. Um, Number one, that doesn't that doesn't fly. I don't know if they're trying to update his image or whatever, but I know Bernard the Executioner Hopkins. Maybe it doesn't fit anymore because he hasn't KO'd anyone in almost in 9 years. Who knows? But you won't hear me call. I'm not gonna call that man the alien Hopkins. No, he's the executioner, and Brother Nazim needs to burn that green kufi um, ASAP. It is. I mean, it is spectacular that Bernard is still competitive. But we'll have to see because, in as much as his interview says he's the number one light heavyweight, he isn't the number one light heavyweight. He's a holder. He's an alphabet holder just like everyone else, with the exception of course, the man at light heavyweight is Dennis Stevenson. Now, unfortunately, due to the Cold War, it's like almost next to possible. Like the that fight probably will not come to pass anytime soon. And I would give Stevenson a good shot. Actually beating Hopkins just based off the actual no for skills is whatever, but work rate. However, Stevenson does have it. He has a very significant one to actually trouble Hopkins. Um, yeah, so it would be Stevenson and then Kovalev. Kovalev, I think is a more doable fight in terms of whatever it made, and I would give Kovalev an edge in that too, because Kovalev has some, has some power, has a good amount of power. Um, as for I mean, like I said, he put on a good showing, so I mean, I'm pretty sure we'll probably see him on American TV soon. I mean, at some point, against against another light heavyweight or another light heavyweight champion. Who knows? He didn't like I said. I mean, it wasn't a fight where I say I don't ever want to see him again. But he looked like he would be, but just he looked like he would probably be more interesting to someone who is less cagey and more brawl oriented. So that's my thoughts from the Showtime card last night. I was expecting garbage, and I got three fights that were entertaining in their own special way. So until next week, all right, peace.